The Bixby Spartans are back in the state championship game. They'll take on the Owasso Rams on Saturday night at 7 o'clock at UCO in Edmond. I'm joined now by the head coach of the Bixby Spartans, Loren Montgomery. And coach, I want to start with this. This is a special year for the Spartans and for Bixby High School in general, the Bixby Public Schools, Bixby, Oklahoma, the community. 12 consecutive years the Spartans have played for a state championship, which means this senior class, and I'm not just talking about the football players, the entire senior class at Bixby High School, they've seen the Spartans play for a state title every single year since they started first grade. It's never been done in Oklahoma. I don't know how many other states in the country have seen a streak like that. I can get some research on that and hopefully have an answer by Saturday. But this has been a special year and a special run for Spartan football.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of it that way. I didn't realize that this class had experienced that every year. That's pretty cool and remarkable when you think about it. And we're honored to be here, and obviously have had a ton of good players, coaches, everything that have helped us to get to this point. So it's an honor to get to still be playing. It's an honor to get to go to Edmond and play for a state championship on Saturday.
You guys won 58 consecutive games in the past. You've won 10 championships in the last 11 years. And with winning like that comes national attention, and you've had plenty of it this year. You're no stranger to being nationally ranked, but some national polls had you number one in the country. And I always say, how do you compare teams from California and Florida and Oklahoma and like, how do you compare and do a true national poll? But that kind of recognition is special, and it's awesome for the program. It's awesome for Oklahoma in general, not just Bixby, but Oklahoma high school football. How have you guys handled an even brighter spotlight on the program being considered one of the nation's best football programs?
Well, I don't know that all the publications and national hype and things like that really affect the way that we do business here. And in reality, as you mentioned earlier, you can't really compare. It's not apples to apples. Some of those teams on that list I've watched this season and have 40 Division One players on their roster and things like that, which obviously, a public school team from Oklahoma doesn't have 40 Division One players on the roster, and so I think it's cool for fans and people on the internet to banter about. But honestly, we're just grateful that we have an opportunity to field a good team and that people do recognize our program as being one of the best at developing student athletes.
You might not have 40 Division One football players, but you have quite a few. The senior class, you have quite a few kids committed. The junior class has more coming up. The sophomore class, you might have the number one player in the junior and sophomore classes here in Oklahoma. I asked you this question back in August. Do you feel like top to bottom with all the experience, the overall talent, next level players? Do you feel like this is, arguably your most talented team? And you told me back then, like, look, it's August. We don't know yet. We haven't played a game. You still have one more game, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. This season, do you feel like this year's Spartan squad is your most talented team from top to bottom?
Well, it's hard to say. We've had so many good teams and exceptional players that have come through, and there have been years where you'd have a really good group on one side of the ball or the other, and so I'll probably tell you the same thing I told you in August. Time will tell when we have an opportunity to look and maybe we won't tell. That's something maybe that we leave up to our alumni to banter with when they come back for our alumni golf tournament, which is something that usually happens.
Yeah, there's not going to be any bias there, right? Right. There
Yeah.
won't be any bias in those conversations. Let's talk about some of the players that have stood out and have been special over the last several years, and specifically this year. And we want to start with quarterback Carson Kirby, a 3-year starter at the quarterback position, just an absolute bulldog back there, man. He's not going to back down from anyone or anything. He's been incredibly efficient. He runs this offense to near perfection, over 100 touchdowns for his career. He's been very special to the Spartans, specifically on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, to be a 3-year starter is pretty remarkable, and Carson has run our offense at a high level for some time. Coach Snyder, our offense coordinator, puts a ton on his plate, and Carson just does a great job. It's almost like the more that Coach Snyder puts on his plate, the more dialed in he becomes, and so yeah, I can't say enough for him. We've been fortunate enough here at Bixby to have several runs of 3-year starters. With Tanner Griffin was a 3-year starter, and then Mason Williams was a 3-year starter, and then now Carson Kirby. So it takes a special player to start at a very difficult position as a sophomore in high school.
Cord Nolan, a senior who's, speaking of starting for multiple years, I believe he's a 4-year starter for you guys. I remember him running out there in his very first game during his freshman year, coincidentally against Owasso. Looking at this Bixby dynasty and your run over the last 15 years, I got to think Cord Nolan is one of the most experienced players that you've coached during this time, considering how many games he's played and started in.
Yeah, Cord is a special player, as you mentioned. He's done so much. Really could probably play about any position on the field, and does and has for us. As a freshman, there aren't a lot of freshmen that are up at the varsity level at 6A, and he's been able to do that and do it at a high level. Cord. Played a ton of special teams. He played outside linebacker, he played tight end as a freshman and made a lot of plays, and then has been a full-time starter really on both sides of the ball as a sophomore, junior, and now senior. And he's the alpha in our locker room. I mean, he's the guy that people turn to for direction, for wisdom, those sort of things, which is why he's voted team captain 2 years in a row.
Can we talk about Caden Penny because he impresses me every time I see him? And I look, I've watched I don't know how many games of Caden Penny, on film and in person. I still don't know what I like him better as offensive lineman, defensive lineman. He's dominant on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And look, you've had some really good O linemen, D linemen come through this program, but Caden Penny, for what he's been able to do, and he still has another year ahead of him. He's only a junior. He's a very special talent on both sides of the ball.
He is a very special talent on both sides of the ball, and the best part about him is that he's just so humble and down to earth. I think he'll tell you, that he's just thankful for the gifts that he's been given and the opportunities that he's had. But Caden is, a high level player, obviously committed to OU and SEC school. Athletically, is, as you mentioned, probably the best offensive lineman at this point in his career that I have coached. And, that's 26 years of coaching, and he's smart. He's diligent. He's a hard worker, extremely athletic. He's not as gigantic maybe as some offensive linemen that are as highly touted as him, but he's physical and athletic, and just really has a head for the game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And, we're going to put out our players to watch for Bixby this week on the website. And the list, like, I'm having a hard time narrowing it down and keeping guys off the list because we could sit here and talk about different guys. I just want to give you an open floor to talk about some of the other players that have stood out on both sides of the ball. I know Jason Mull has had a great year at running back. Nathan Gonzalez is one of the most underrated players in the state at wide receiver. He's been special. The entire O line has been really good. Jack Gill, that specialty quarterback there on goal line situations. Defensively, you guys have had, great players. Braden Presley, Nathan Hobbs, just the open floor to talk about your team and some of the guys that have stood out this season on this run to a championship.
Yeah, I don't know that I could just pick out any one or two. We've had a lot of guys contribute, and each week at our Sunday staff meeting, we sit down and we talk about our players of the game. And it's, to be honest with you, it's really nice to have so many different guys contributing, so many guys be nominated for those players of the week. You mentioned quite a few, but I think. It just goes to show, how hard our kids have worked to get into this opportunity and get a moment, to shine. And I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the way they work, and I'm proud of the way they played last Friday.
All right, so we got to talk about the Owasso Rams. That's the game coming up on Saturday night in Edmond. For the fourth consecutive year, you guys open the season against Owasso, and you're going to be playing them again in the playoffs for the third time in the last 4 years in the state title game. Obviously, everyone remembers last year's instant classic that went to overtime. Selfishly, I hope for another instant classic on Saturday. But when you think about the Owasso Rams, what's your overall impression? And can you take anything away from that meeting back in August? Because it is a long time ago, and both teams are very different from 3 months ago.
They're a completely different team now than they were back in August. New staff, new coordinators on each side of the ball, and so they were just basically, learning each other, learning the system. Like with any sort of turnover or transition, there are challenges. And what we've seen on film is a team that has settled in and become very comfortable with their systems and is executing at a high level. And then you couple that with the extreme amount of talent that they have. You can just start naming guys off. The Takari Bethel, one of the best players in the state, has been for the last couple of years. The quarterback, I think, is one of the best quarterbacks in the state. Hall, the running back, is just super dynamic and shows up every single week. And then on the other side of the ball, they probably have the best defensive lineman in the state. Taj Overton has been around what seems like forever. I think he started a little bit as a freshman, and is just so talented. He's a technician in what he does, and a defensive scheme that forces you to really maintain and sustain drives. But no, you can take a few things from it, but I think at the end of the day, they are a completely different team and have really grown since that first meeting.
Then finally, we're ending all these conversations with the same question. It's an easy one for me to ask, maybe not an easy answer. Take this wherever you want to take it. What's when you look at this matchup on Saturday night, what's going to be the biggest key for the Bixby Spartans to win another state championship?
Well, there are a lot of factors that go into that, but I think, like in any big game, protecting the football is going to be huge, and maybe generating a few takeaways, from Owasso would be great on our end. Sustaining drives and being great in special teams, but we tell our guys, you don't have to go out and do anything extraordinary. You just have to go out and do your job. And so I think for us, it's going to be important that we have 11 guys on each side of the ball that go out and do their job and do it at a high level and play extremely hard.
Coach, congratulations on making it back to the state championship game. A heck of a season so far. It's not over. You got one more at 7 o'clock against the Owasso Rams. Seriously, man, this has been awesome to watch over the last decade plus now. Really cool thing for Bixby, Oklahoma, and this Bixby football program. Congrats again, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Bixby head coach Loren Montgomery. That does it for this edition of the Coaches Conversations here on our Prep Red Zone Oklahoma YouTube channel. You can check out our conversation with Owasso head coach Bill Blankenship, as well as other coaches' conversations for the 6A2 title game, the 5A title game, and all of our state championship coverage, both on our YouTube channel as well as on our website, Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. For Coach Montgomery, I'm Michael Knight, and this has been another edition of the Coaches Conversations here on our Prep Red Zone Oklahoma YouTube channel.